Releasing in cinemas across Australia on the 5th of October is an Australian film called Three Chords and the Truth. And it is a real truth to say that I am now speaking to the writer-director of Three Chords and the Truth, Claire Pasvolsky. Claire, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thank you, Peter. Lovely to be here.
This is such an interesting film, interesting story about Jackie Marshall, who features in the film, and it's based on her own life story, which I found so fascinating. Tell me about how this fictional film, narrative film, came about.
Okay, so I'd also say it's not completely based on her entire life. Her aspects of her story were inspiring for the story. So not everything that you see in the film is exactly what happened in Jackie's story. So
Uh-huh.
just to clear that up.
Yeah.
So what happened was, so I'll just go back to the origin of the story. Is that what I should do? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I met Jackie, I think it was 20, it would have been 2019, end of 2019. And she was part of a documentary I made called Big Sky Girls, which was about mentorship for young women in music, entering the music industry. So I had met her very briefly in a very crowded environment, and I was watching a lot of different women mentoring young women. And for some reason, I did notice her in the crowd, and to see the way that she was communicating the art of songwriting to young people, she really did stand out, both in the way she was teaching authentically, but also the music in which she was making. So my husband and I, Steve Pasvolsky, he's also a writer, director, and producer. So he produced and edited this film. He and I were discussing the fact that we were desperate to make a feature film. And after years and years, and he had this idea of having the story of a young boy who is homeless and is going through this really difficult time, and then he's taken in by an older male who mentors him, and it changes the trajectory of his life. But because I had Jackie in my head and I'd just been working on this musical documentary, I thought, wouldn't it be great if it was about the story of a young girl and an older woman, and it was about music? And Jackie Marshall would be perfect to play this role, not knowing whether or not she could act, but just it was just an instinct, really. So we were fleshing out this story, and just by talking to Jackie and interviewing her, aspects of her own story began to kind of weave into the fabric of the narrative. So, for example, Jackie's cancer story then became part of that journey, but also aspects of her life.
What an interesting
So she,
trajectory.
yeah,
Yeah, how
yeah,
interesting. So, okay, thank you for clearing that up. So it's partially based on her life story, as you say, but it's certainly it's a fictional creation, pretty much. So, how did you find working with Jackie and getting her to act and getting her involved in the film?
well, it was a fantastic collaboration, really, and again, a very high risk kind of venture as well, because we had a very short turnaround because of COVID. We had film projects that had been lined up or got changed and shifted and postponed. So we happened to have a small window open, and we were able to get a little bit of funding. And also, Jackie was available. The film crew that we worked with were available on this, but it was a very small amount of time. And so it was really, the script was written. Then I think I had something like 3 days rehearsal with Jackie and Maisie, who plays the younger character Ruby. And yeah, I mean, because she's a jazz singer, she's really good at improvisation. So she hadn't acted before, but she'd done so much performing that the two kind of did work very well together. So she was fantastic, very generous, but also open to that level of direction. So sometimes it'd be like, okay, that's great, but let's try it this way. And she really took direction very well, which is something we think all actors can do, but they not all of them can take it well. So she was fantastic.
Oh, no, I'm really glad to hear that. I'm glad that it all worked out. And for you, it must have been a challenge because you've produced and you've been involved with documentaries and with other productions, but this is your first feature film as a director. Tell me about that, how that worked out for you.
Well, I've also got 25 years of working in theatre and working with actors, and my background is as an actor as well. So I've done like my happy place is really directing and working with actors.
Uh-huh.
Documentary was something I sort of just fell into. Again, it's a passion, but really the happy place for me is working with script, working with actors, and being on the ground with that. So that's probably my greatest joy as an artist is doing that. I had not directed a feature film before, so that was a baptism of fire. But I was really lucky that I had my husband there as a producer and people I'd worked with before around me, so I had a lot of support. It wasn't like I was going in and being fed to the wolves. I was, it was probably the dream first feature film, and also that it was a very contained piece. So as you know, you've seen the film, so there's a lot of sort of interiors, but the biggest shoots when we were doing some of the scenes in live pubs, which were quite edgy edgy
Mm.
shoots with lots and lots of people. Those things were more challenging, but when it was the kind of smaller um, moments in the film, that was quite straightforward. But yeah, absolutely loved it.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, as you say, you have lots of theatre experience, so that you pretty much are well prepared to make a feature film.
Mm.
So yeah, no, that's fantastic. Tell me about finding Maisie Owens. She's very good in the film.
Yeah, she's fantastic. So we had, again, because we had very small budget, weren't able to hire a casting agent. So again, that's something I've dabbled in myself, is casting. We didn't have a lot of time to do auditions, so we had maybe 2 days and saw about 20, 25 young women for that role. And she was one of the last ones that came in during that period, and we've met some really interesting people. And there was something again about Maisie that was, I think she was 20 when we met her. So she was that bit older, but she had that little baby face and she was able to play that 17-year-old girl really convincingly. So there was sort of like a wisdom to her with being a little bit older, but also she had the natural talent, but she also had some training. And again, the stuff she was able to do in the audition, I just thought, I think I'm going to get a lot out of this working with this actor, rather than casting someone younger who perhaps would have been really good as well. But she also had the maturity to be able to deal with. I mean, we were asking a lot of her on those night shoots, walking, getting on those trains and going into pubs and doing, quite not dangerous because she was safe. We were there to protect her, but it was a very demanding shoot. So yeah, and she's been wonderful throughout.
Well, again, congratulations on how that all worked out so well, because it translates well
Yeah.
onto film. I mean, the film does grapple with a number of issues in terms of facing death, about composing, writing music, leaving a legacy, about the runaway teenager issue, and about family disputes and upsets and all that sort of thing. So you've woven into the screenplay quite a lot of really strong issues, which I gather you went
Mm.
through quite a process of drafting the screenplay.
Yes, and I think too, something that's happened throughout the shoot, because we began, like the way we worked was we were filming at the end of 2020, and then when we were putting together the assembly of the film, it was like, oh, that issue with Ruby's background, we need to put in some more details of that. So we did a pickup shoot where we added all that, the fabric of showing her mother and showing what happened to her mother, so it was clearer, and also layering the relationship with Ruby and her father, to show that he wasn't just this one-dimensional brute, but that he had been before. Her mother. Oh, I don't want to give you too many spoilers away,
Mm.
but her mother has committed suicide 12 months prior to her meeting the main character. And it was to demonstrate that she had had this close relationship with the father, but as she has lost her mother, her father has not been able to cope, so she's essentially lost both of her parents.
Mm.
So yes, to answer your question, it was really, we had the story, but then there were things that we went, no, we really need to add some more things here. So we did do some shuffling around with that.
Okay, okay. Well, again, it worked out very well. I'm intrigued by the title, Three Chords and the Truth. Tell me about the title and why you settled on that as the name of the film.
Well, a couple of things. One was back when I was shooting the documentary Big Sky Girls, one of the mentors, Craig Spann, they were figuring out a song, and he said, "Oh, you can write a song with three chords. You know, you just need to mix it up a bit." And then I said that to Jackie when we were talking about this film, and she said, "Oh, well, that's the Nashville saying. All you need is three chords and the truth to write a song." And it was like, well, that's really the basis of it. Is the film is about the simplicity, but also the beauty of creativity, but that you can just do something quite simply and tell the truth in order to make something beautiful and operate authentically in the world. So that's really what it's about. So it has
Okay,
the musical connotation, but it's also that the characters are not being perhaps truthful about their own stories.
okay. Again, very good. Um, Jackie is very good in the film. Very impressed by her and her songs. So she specially composed the songs for the film.
Not all of them. Some of them she already had in her back catalogue, but she did new variations of them. But there are quite a few that she did compose for the film.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
When she, how did she respond, and Maisie as well, when you showed them the final version of the film?
Oh, well, there have been a couple of versions of it. So there was the first version that was, and because Maisie was based in Newcastle where we were editing the film, so sometimes she'd pop in and she'd see little bits of it throughout. Whereas I think Jackie, because a lot of it was her story, like not all of it, but
Hmm.
it was more raw for her. She wasn't playing a character as much as Maisie was playing Ruby. So there was a real connection with it. And you're right, exactly, that the music is her as well. So I think she was quite overwhelmed the first time she saw it, and she took some time to process it. So I think she loved it, but she does take some time to process things and then give feedback. So when she saw the next version of it, she loved it. But again, it was very confronting because she's also watching her own death on screen. So that in itself, having, because she has been through now 4 bouts of cancer, very confronting. So I think there was that aspect of it. So every time she watches it, she's watching it with an audience as well. So we had a Sydney screening, and she was like, "Wow, I really got it that time." So she has a very extreme kind of emotional reaction to it, I would say.
Sure.
I mean, she's very proud of it, but I think too that it's from her heart as well. So she put her whole self into the film as well. So, and we don't take that generosity lightly as well. So
Of course,
it's
fully.
big.
It's big. Of course, I absolutely understand. And what's her health like now?
Yes, she's doing well. I mean, spoken publicly about this recently too, so it's okay for me to share. But just after the Sydney Film Festival, which wasn't that long ago, she had to have a second mastectomy, so she had another round come back. So, it's not great that that is also on screen at the same time, but she's doing really well at the moment. So she's just come back from some time in Europe, and she's going to be in Melbourne for the Q&A at Yarraville Sun. So she's literally just come back to the country, I think, last week. So she's doing
Ah,
really well.
I look forward to meeting her because I think you're aware, Claire, I'm hosting the Q&A at the Sun Theatre on Friday.
Can't wait. Can't wait. It'll be awesome. And Maisie will be there as well.
Ah,
Maisie's coming down as well. So there'll be 2 cast members. So that'll be great.
oh, excellent. It'll be good discussion. And I know the audiences that attend the Sun Theatre are very responsive. So, yeah, that should work out well. Okay, enough
Lovely.
indulgence there. It's not about me, it's about you, it's about the film. Now, Brisbane Film Festival, the film has already screened, and Cinefest Oz in WA, and now it's getting a release at selected cinemas from Thursday. And it's always interesting how films get released in Australian films. It's not always easy to get films out there and
No.
to get the public to see them.
That's right. And I think too, like we just have to take this we're taking this journey quite I mean it's not to sound spiritual, but it's been very humbling, but also a very authentic process. Like the way we even made the film on the when we were on set, I was just saying to Steve, my husband, we had this day where we were just having the best day and the filming was going great. And we just said something like, we are so lucky to be making this movie. It doesn't matter what happens because we know something special is happening here. So there's been this element of having to just be in the moment and sort of let go and just hope it's going to go where it will, because we don't have stars. There are no stars in the film. Richie Wilkins and Julia Zamiro, who people know have cameos,
Yeah.
but we don't have Hemsworth or anyone like that in it. So it is hard to get that out, or Lady Gaga, because it's a musical. But it has been that journey of let's just trust and see where it goes. So the first place we premiered was Brisbane, and that was special because that's Jackie's hometown. So the first time we had a full audience was just lovely and very responsive. And then we were picked up with Bonsai Films. So Jonathan Page really got the film, which we were so lucky with as well. And then it went into Sydney Film Festival and Cinefest Oz and the Travelling Film Festival and Vision Splendid. So it's going into these
Mm.
places where it really is touching people. And I think, unfortunately, people don't go to the movies like they did in the past, but if they do, they will really get that experience with this one. So it hasn't been an easy journey, and there's also that lack of control of knowing what is going to happen next. How are people going to come to the film? So yeah,
Mm.
just we just hope it's well received. That's all we can do really, because we've been really lucky with our audiences so far,
Good
and
to
it
hear
does seem
that.
to touch people. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say it has a universal story, universal theme, and a lot of interesting issues that a film deals with. So it will touch audiences. So hopefully, people will go to the
Mm.
special screenings, in particular the Q&A screenings, which is great that those are happening. I was just wondering, Claire, were
Mm.
there, as this is your first feature film, were there any
Mm.
particular films, any influences in terms of filmmakers or particular individual films that may perhaps have influenced the way you approached making Three Chords and the Truth?
Um, well, I think Mike Lee has been a huge influence for me. I think for many years and for many reasons. That I think the way he works with his actors and also tells those stories, and the time you see characters alone in their own space. That he was very influential for me as a young actor and writer, and I think director. So he's sort of continued to be an influence. Ken Loach as well,
Mm.
who I love, and films like The Squid and the Whale, which I
Ah,
rewatched the other night, and I was just like, I love those films that aren't too big, but are often about families, and also seeing characters alone in their own space to see what really goes on when characters are by themselves and letting moments breathe. But I love all kinds of movies as well. Like Tootsie was one of my all-time favorite films. I've seen that so many times. Dancer in the Dark. So many different kinds of films
mm.
I absolutely love. So yeah.
What an
So I
interesting
couldn't I couldn't say just one.
No, that's fine. That's fine. What an interesting collection of films there. That's really fascinating. And you mentioned Squid and the Whale. Noah Baumbach, of course, such
Mm.
a key filmmaker. He and Greta Gerwig, who are excellent indie filmmakers, and yet are able to reach big audiences.
Well, you never know.
Yes.
There might be hope for me yet. But I think it's that thing of going, you have a story to tell, and it may be a small story, but let's just make this story. And I think we're so proud of the film. Wherever it goes next, we don't really know what's going to happen, but so far it's just been a pleasure to sort of have this experience.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely endorse
Mm.
that. And I suppose just to conclude, I always like asking, are you working on another film at the moment?
Yes, I am. I'm also at the final stages of my PhD, so I've got to finish
Ah,
that very soon. But yes, I'm doing a follow up to Three Chords, which is it's a music based film as well, but it's a psychological thriller about musicians on the road. So it's a think Thelma and Louise meets Black Swan. So two central female
wow.
characters at odds with each other, but then have to join forces. So it's much darker than Three Chords, but yeah, something different. So I'm writing the screenplay for that at the moment
What an
and
interesting,
hoping to get
yeah.
funding.
Yeah, oh yeah, funding's always the fun part. I know, I understand that.
Mm,
What an interesting
yeah.
amalgam of a potential story. That sounds great. I look forward to seeing that.
Thank
And
you, Peter.
and certainly, I recommend everyone viewing this interview and listening to it on radio goes to see Three Chords and the Truth in Australian cinemas from the 5th of October, in cinemas across Australia. And it's been my great pleasure to be speaking to the writer director of Three Chords and the Truth, Claire Pasvolsky. Claire, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Peter. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. See you at the sun.
Okay. See you at the sun. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
yeah.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.